And welcome to today's webinar on Lean Six Sigma Black Belt training. Do I need it for the future? First, I'd like to go through a couple of the logistical matters. The webinar is scheduled for 1 hour. This is an informal structure, more informal than usual. We will have content, but we also really encourage many questions throughout the webinar and at the end. So please feel free to type in your questions and we will get those addressed throughout the webinar. We will also be recording this and send you an email with a link to the recording within 48 hours if you would like to review it or share with any of your colleagues that possibly missed today's webinar. I will now introduce our speaker, Rick Haynes. Rick is a 20-year Lean and Six Sigma practitioner and one of Smarter Solutions senior instructors. Through his career, he is certified as a Master Black Belt, Champion, and Yellow Belt, along with teaching and certifying professionals in all the Lean Six Sigma areas. His personal Lean Six Sigma work has spanned nearly all business types, manufacturing, transactional, along with research and development business. He is a master's degree statistician and has taught statistics in the Penn State University system. He has worked in all levels of business from the entry level up to site engineering manager. So his life and experiences will definitely help in the discussion around Black Belt training and certification. So I'll now turn it over to Rick Haynes.
Hello everybody, thanks for attending. This topic of the seminar is really just about what black belt training is and see if it is something you might be interested in. Of course, a little of this is to suggest why our company, Smarter Solutions, would be a good choice for training, but it is somewhat general on the whole concept. So we'll talk a little bit about the history, not knowing if you do come from a history of a company that does have a Lean Six Sigma program, or a Lean or a Six Sigma program. You may or may not. You may not know much about it, but just heard it might be a good thing. Well, we're going to talk about it. We have the history. We're going to talk about what black belts and Lean Six Sigma do, how we train them, a little bit about our course, and then ongoing opportunities for learning. Now, Six Sigma itself has been around since the late 80s. Motorola came up with it. Is a method to try to improve quality when they couldn't really do 100% inspections. Before that date in manufacturing, most quality was done by inspecting all your product. If it failed, you get it fixed, reworked, or scrapped. Well, this is the time I was working at Texas Instruments when we were working with Motorola, along with a number of other companies, to put together the Six Sigma program. Because I am sort of old, I've been at this a while. You couldn't have been there more than a couple years more than me, unless you're one of the starters at Motorola. But what they said is we were building digital pagers, and most of the returns they were getting from their customers were ones that had been reworked, and they looked good, but they couldn't inspect them. So they said, how do I improve quality when I can't test everything? And Six Sigma came about where it was a method to improve the probability of being good when you couldn't really measure if it was good. So you would look inward to your processes, so the X's, and tried to make them all perform at a level that you had a low probability of being defective. So that way you could produce good quality without having a final inspection. At the time they created this in the 80s and early 90s, black belts were the only rating they had, and your job was to help improvement teams throughout the company. So you were more of a facilitator. It wasn't real popular outside of manufacturing. General Electric brought it in the mid-90s when Jack Welch said, I need it for General Electric. Took a pretty harsh way to do it, but he got consultants that were some of the original people that put Six Sigma together at Motorola, and that's where they created black belts, green belts, champions, sponsors, and all these other names, and master black belts. They did it so that the consultant could provide training courses, which was a revenue source, but they went beyond the Six Sigma practitioner being a facilitator of other teams to being a team leader, so more was put into it. Most companies today follow this GE model for Six Sigma and Lean Six Sigma. You basically have green belts that are somewhat improvement practitioners in their own area, Black belts are generally improvement team leaders and practitioners that are skilled in the soft side, so they can make improvements anywhere in their company. Generally, they're in a separate group or they're full-time on temporary assignment to run improvement projects throughout the company. Now, master black belts, which is what I guess my current rating would be, they were created to be the instructors and the mentors for black belts and green belts. At this time in GE, it became more of a business process and got away from manufacturing. And it started working outside in the what we call transactional or the service industries came about at this point. The tools for Six Sigma work in every single business out there. It also provided us at the GE point, not back with Motorola, the DMAIC process, or DMAIC. Now, this is probably the generic improvement model, although some consultants use IMAIC for identify rather than define, but it's just people who want to copyright and sound different. It isn't that. You shouldn't be put off by it, I guess. This is just the scientific process. It could have been like PDCA or Plan, Do, Check, Act, that you figure out what the problem is, then you see what performance is, that's the measure. Once you collect all your data, you analyze it. Now, data doesn't always mean numbers. It can be evidence and stories, but you collect evidence and test it. You propose an improvement, then you improve it in the improve phase. At this point, you verify that if I make the changes I want, the process gets better. And if they are confirmed, you make the permanent improvement. And I think one thing Six Sigma has added to the whole genre is the control phase. Instead of just walking away because you're improved, they put in a rigor that makes changes more permanent. It's somewhat like closing the circle. You might say dotting the I's and crossing the T's, but it makes you put something in place as a control system that will recognize when the process goes bad, and if you do it right, you will leave a process for the group that will recover back to their improved state. So that's the basics of what Six Sigma put in. Now you can see in the green block in the upper right, we're going to go through 4 groups, where the one we are really teaching is the IEE at the bottom. After Six Sigma, Lean came about. Now, Lean is really an Americanized version of what Toyota runs their manufacturing facilities with, called the Toyota Production System. And if you study the stuff, the Toyota Production System actually came via Ford Motor Corporation before World War II. But the concept of it is, if you believe your processes are generally good, what you do is you simplify them. You try to remove the amount of labor, remove the number of steps, remove wasted time, wasted processes, wasted movement. But the idea is if you reduce it to the simplest process, you're less apt to make a mistake or an error or bad things. Now, they lead to the just-in-time. Well, just-in-time wasn't really a Lean concept. It was also taken from other areas of production, but they're trying to get you in Lean to do the minimum amount of required to get just what the customer desires. So you do the right number of parts at the right time, the right quantity, and the concept is it gets better. Now, they brought in some new terms to process improvement about value-added, non-value-added, and what they call waste. Well, I guess non-value-added but necessary. Now, these value-added, not value-added terms were available and used well before the Lean and the Toyota Production System came about for cost time studies and just movement and human studies of processes. But so they reused the names, but they forced you to go look at things that were being done that weren't providing value to the customer. The idea is if you do what they provide value, the customer will then pay you for it. Oop, I went to the end of the process, so that was my fault. Go back to where I was. All right. They also brought in a thing called the value stream and developed a tool called the value stream map. Now, how Lean came about is 2 people, I think Womack and Jones, 2 authors, went and saw the Toyota Production System, came back to the U.S. and wrote a book called The Machine That Changed the World, which was the Japanese manufacturing machine. There has since been Lean Enterprise, but they chose the word Lean, and it's not an acronym. Lean means I've cut the fat out of the process. I'm just doing what I need to do. They said you pick a process or a value stream that produces value, and you simplify it, reduce wasted effort, time, make sure that all the transactions and items pull continuously through and they don't sit around. And the other one is pulling value, only doing what the customer wants. Now, this also was a purely manufacturing process when it was created. But as in Six Sigma, the same precepts work great outside of manufacturing as long as you can find a value-added process and something that's moving. It could be a transaction, it could be an idea, it could be a piece of paper, but something has to be moving. Now, those two processes generally ran side by side in big manufacturing companies. They had the Six Sigma people and they had the Lean people, trained from different sources but with the same goal: make the process better. And if you define better as better quality or quicker or less waste, better was really what they were moving after. Now, about at the same time, but a little later than both of these, came the theory of constraints, which was another improvement philosophy. Came out of a gentleman by Elijah Goldratt in Israel. And his idea is if you looked at a process, you could find what was constraining it or holding it back. And if you worked only on that, you got a greater gain for less effort. So it fit awful close to a lot of the Lean concepts and some of the Six Sigma ones, but he changed the view of it to say, don't just look at the system, first look at see what's holding it back or its constraint. What he brought to it was a system view of process improvement was quite good. Some people use this in their selection of improvement projects, but you can also use it within an improvement effort to decide where you need to be working. Now, the hard part about this, I went through a deployment of it back in manufacturing, is it's a great philosophy, but when he wrote the book, he didn't quite take it to how to implement it. So it wasn't necessarily easy to implement if you were anything other than a simple one-pass process. But it was a wonderful view. The idea was, now look at this graphic, comes out of one of our classroom slides. If you look at the jagged or the segmented lines where it says process, the gap between the two lines is intended to be the capacity of the process. And the two parallel lines are what the customer is asking you to produce in capacity. The idea is everybody except for process step 5 has less capacity or has more capacity than you need. So if you made an improvement in step 3 so you could get more through or reduce the labor required to do it, note the customer didn't get any more parts. You can also picture it like a hose with water running through it. The narrowest point defines the max flow you can get. But this concept was to target you where your improvement needs to be made, so you only have to do little improvements. It is actually quite good. Now, pause for a minute here and remind you, if you have any questions on this stuff, please type in the interface that came with GoToWebinar. Mallory's over here just waiting to answer questions and bring them up. She'll interrupt me as we go. So please do it. Even if you just want to practice and send her a little note that says, hi, I can hear you fine. But some interaction gets you more engaged, because a lot of this Lean Six Sigma stuff, you have to break some of your paradigms so that you can walk into places and be confident to talk and ask and figure out what's going on. It really is a fun career. All right? It looks like something changed on my screen. Somebody may have asked a question. But I want to show how these three go together here. Now, this is just my diagram of the sequence of these processes. The Toyota production system was from a long time ago. I could have drawn before Six Sigma. There was TQM, Total Quality Management. There was Zero Defects by, Crosby. Deming was putting stuff out. There was re-engineering, quality circles. There's been an infinite number of quality programs that have come up before we found Lean and Six Sigma. They're all blended into both of them. For years, they ran side by side, and Theory of Constraints came in too as its own independent training. In Theory of Constraints, I guess I did not say it, but they trained people as what was called a Jonah, because Jonah was the fictional character when they told the Theory of Constraints story that was the all-wise and knowing person. So you got trained as that instead of a black belt. What came later, bigger companies saw that they had Lean and they had Six Sigma running the same company, and they competed against each other. They fought, they undermined, they would do things that were not their best, most effective problem to go after, but if they got it, they'd work it. So a lot of them started trying to combine the two efforts together. And what they would have is it was a Lean or a Six Sigma project. So you'd come to the group with a problem. They would assess it, like in the DMAIC, they'd define and start measuring it and go, this is more Lean-ish. So we would give it to the guys that had learned Lean, or this might be more Six Sigma-ish. We'd give it to those people. So you had what we started calling Lean Six Sigma. What it meant, though, is we decide who it was and then run their process and bring it back together. They started adding the control phase to the Lean projects, but they also started doing some simplification in the Lean, in the Six Sigma stuff. Well, what's come out in probably the last 10 years, people started seeing that the parallel processes, even working together, was not optimum. And you got to imagine everybody doing this are improvement experts. So they decided, well, why don't we mix Lean and Six Sigma? Instead of running it, choose one, we will blend them together. You will find the leading providers out there today are teaching what we call blended Lean Six Sigma. That really there is no longer a Lean project, and there's no longer a Six Sigma project. Every project is run through the same path, that it's got a mixture of Lean tools and Six Sigma tools in an optimal pattern. And my belief, it's far better than either one of them that I've been trained in, because now you don't have to use tools that aren't as effective. There's always jumping back and forth. Now, some of the issues between Lean and Six Sigma providers is what my company might say is the best combination of them. Another company might replace a tool that Smarter Solutions would teach with one that's pretty close, but comes out of another genre. So they started to deviate a bit more, but the concepts were the same. You'll find even American Society of Quality, or ASQ, strikes me 2-3 years ago, they recognized this blending, and they're not usually the first on the block. They follow late when the industry follows. But they went from Six Sigma Black Belt certifications to Lean Six Sigma and added Lean into their courses. But that's where we are today. What you'll find, what we teach here at Smarter Solutions, and we're calling it the Integrated Enterprise Excellence, or IEE Lean Six Sigma, to differentiate that we've blended it a little bit more than most. We've brought in the theory of constraints. The owner, Forrest Breifogel, is really a system thinker. So we really have a path through all these that you don't have to go figure it out on your own. That you can actually follow somewhat of a recipe to solve a problem. But also, along with what we're teaching here that might be different from a regular black belt course, is the business side. I know I learned it in all my past jobs, that Lean Six Sigma is just a wrench. That unless you pull back and have the black belt to understand the context of the business, how do they judge what's the right improvement to make and weight different changes, which is the best for the company? A lot of where Lean Six Sigma is going now on the forefront is making it more of a business process improvement tool that you look upward into the business to ensure that you're really doing the right thing for the company rather than just doing a localized improvement, building stronger silos for people. And that's really what we teach here and some of the leading providers do. So what's the IEE side? We still recommend projects for improvement. We don't require it to be quality-based. You don't have to have defects. It can just be a lean-type problem statement that we just need to make it go faster. We don't need to improve quality. Make it run cheaper. Make it run with less people. From there, you integrate all of the Lean and Six Sigma tools to come up with a high-level improvement that affects the whole enterprise. The nice thing about these blended tools is every project really has benefits of both. There's always simplification to do. There's generally data that should be collected in every project. The pure Lean people generally never would go back and verify their change. It was all, Lean originally was built on the concept of you can define the ideal conditions. Any move from the current to the ideal is a good change, and they're right. But they don't judge which ideal is more than the other. You just try to do 40 to 50 improvements on a Kaizen event in a general Lean thing, hoping that some of them work. Six Sigma, in its original, was to analyze to the death and only make 1 or 2 changes. So, in somewhat, they were hunting with a high-powered rifle in Six Sigma and shooting shotguns in Lean. They both ended up hitting the target, but one One might do better in some cases and might not do well in others. But this Lean Six Sigma blending is a little bit of both. So you get rapidly to an answer that involves a lot of concepts, but it takes the step a little bit sooner. All right? That's the end of the history. If you have questions on those, anybody? I got to believe if you're on this webinar, you've heard of Lean and Six Sigma, and it's been in the newspapers and publications for close to 20 years. So we must all have read about it. You'll also find a lot of the providers now are moving away from Lean Six Sigma in their titles and in their organizations because of the baggage from the history of successes and failures and all of those terms. I guess that's why we use IEE, but a lot of clients now call it business process improvement using the Lean and Six Sigma tools. Now there's a couple other stuff you should learn if you're going to be a process improvement person. And we touch on these through the class. One is root cause analysis, which is most people have learned it when they get here, by the way. It's where there's fault tree diagrams. It's where you say, this went bad at this moment. Let's find what's different now than it was before to find out the cause and then correct it. Most companies are quite good at that. And some, I might call that firefighting. The next one is a PDCA, or Plan, Do, Check, Act. You may have learned it as PDSA, which is the study and act, depending if it came from Deming or Schuhart in the 30s. But really it is called the continuous improvement cycle. It's methods to do small iterative improvements to work your way to the improved state without having to do a great big project. You find that a lot of improvement groups and work groups use these tools to make little improvements, but it's a little less formal. But these two pieces are taught as part of our black belt course too, so you get an idea of sometimes you don't want a project, these other methods are quicker. I guess I missed the yellow block at the bottom, but the one thing that doesn't work well is ad hoc methods, meaning you just go out and do what seems right, or you just look around when something feels good, and anybody who goes out to investigate would come up with a completely different answer. These methodologies are important for a couple reasons. They're successful, and if you follow it, if somebody else came behind you, they will come up with similar answers and be as sure of them because you're following a methodology. You're also less apt to make improvements that don't matter when you follow a methodology. Well, that's about the topics. That's about the history. Now let's talk about what a typical course is. If you've been looking at Lean Six Sigma black belts, you've hit the internet, and you'll find a myriad of different choices. And at some level, they all look the same on a web page. Generally, their black belts are 4 to 5 weeks of training that include a project that you have to execute and get reviewed by the teacher or the coach that goes along with it. There are some out there. There's one taught in Austin here through one of our competitors that I won't name, but they're sponsored by a university in town, and they do it all over the country, but it's a 2-week black belt course. They say, get your certification 2 weeks, why wait 4? Therefore, it's cheaper. They don't run a project, though. They give simulators for you to go practice on. Now, the difference of these, and I think you can also find online ones now that you never even have to see an instructor. But the good programs out there focus on tools and methods that other people have found useful. And in the old days, which isn't that far back, most black belt training was done internally in companies. The senior people who have been doing a while decided what our company needed. They ran 4- and 5-week classes. You had a coach assigned to you that worked with you all the time to get your project done, to answer questions. This was a very successful method of training because you got your hand held a lot and you got a lot of reassurance that is the right path. Plus, these senior people were always there to give you an additional tool you may not have caught in class or reinforce something you should have learned and sort of forgot. These black belts generally worked in an assignment for 2 years on temporary assignment, then rotated back to the workforce. At this time, there is no central authority on what it takes to be a black belt or what it takes to be certified as one. So really anybody, even if you'd never been trained, could certify a black belt. It's just a piece of paper at some level. A number of years back, and I'm guessing 10, 15 years, maybe 12, American Society of Quality, which provided certifications for lots of quality professions, decided to add black belt. Then they added green belt, and then they added master black belt. But in their way, they give you a test, and if you pass the test, you can be certified. Now, it's not as good necessarily because they don't sponsor you, they don't coach you, they don't watch you run projects. It's a test of book knowledge. It's as close as we get to a certifying authority because they do provide what they say a body of knowledge of what everybody should learn as a black belt. Now, nobody teaches it exactly except them, and they have become a competitor of companies like ours. Most good providers go beyond what they say, as we do, because it is the lowest common denominator what you should know. But still right now, they're as close as we get to a standard, but there's no requirement to follow it. You see stuff like I said, 2 weeks. Some don't require as any project. You just got to take a test. And there's a number now that are completely online that you're certified at the completion of the online course. They assume that if you can answer these online questions, you are good enough to go on a project. The problem with a lot of these, though, is they're not invested in you, the student, to help you get done. They don't mentor you. They're not there to answer questions. Does this mean something? You've had an experience. You want to know if they're talking about the same thing. That's what instructors do. So I do find now we're talking here about an instructor-led class. What we teach is 4 weeks long. Each week is a Monday at 8 till Friday at noon, so 4.5 days. Each training week's about a month apart to give you time to get trained, and you execute those tools, come back and ask questions on it. We train the next tools. You go try them on your project and come back. That's the traditional training method. Now, when you go to online and you don't have the personal contact, if you're by yourself, they're very difficult. Now, if you're within a company with lots of people to help you, there are people that are very successful with online courses. But again, I guess it's one thing that embarrasses us here is that anybody can be a Lean Six Sigma provider. Here in Austin, we lost a contract for Greenbelt training to the state of Texas to a guy that ran an HR firm that decided he was going to do Greenbelt training because he had a book on it, but he charged half of what we did, so we lost it. Because what we're talking here is it's becoming a commodity at some level. You can pick up a book and learn it yourself and take a test. You can go to classes, online. I think Villanova teaches, like others, what they call distance learning. You sort of watch the class over the internet. A little bit better than online, but it's clearly not something you can interact with as much. At some level, if you just want to get certified, it's probably not best to go to one of the top-end providers. Just go read a book and take a test.
Okay, we have a question, right?
Oh, wonderful.
What if your project is transactional and doesn't lend itself to some of the tools such as MSA, DOE, etc.?
Just that you ask that question says you know something about this. That's a provider-specific thing. I know when I worked inside of Bechtel in a couple companies, we had a rule in your training project you had to try all the tools during your project, which meant if it didn't do a measurement system analysis or design of experiments, what you would do, you go find something outside your project to prove that you could do it. We had pretty good training, but a lot of it was book knowledge, and that's how we did that last step of the experiential training. Here at Smarter Solutions, our training course, and I got a slide coming up later on it, but we have you do the experiential event on all the tools in class, either throwing balls with catapults or other exercises that generate numbers. So we're getting, through the classroom time, the experience of seeing the tools. So we expect when you do your project that you use the right tool for what the project requires. So you don't do a DOE if it's purely transactional. But I'll tell you there's a measurement system analysis for transactional processes that most people forget. What they call it an attribute-based one, or some people call it decision system analysis. How good are the people at making a decision to pass something or rework it, or to go to Department A or B, or to pay an invoice because they think it's complete? There are tools that work in the transactional environment that are taught in most courses, which drives me, Mallory, to something I didn't say about if you look on the internet, there is Lean Six Sigma for transactional, and Lean Six Sigma for service, and Lean Six Sigma for healthcare and manufacturing. And I think every new title is someone who's trying to sound different. But I've worked in most of those. There is only really the Lean Six Sigma tool set. A good program will tell you that you need all of the tools, because in manufacturing you still process invoices, you still make work instructions, you still generate processing goals, you still have the same transactional processes you have in an insurance company. Now, in an insurance company processing claims, that claim can be considered almost a manufacturing transaction. You have to take it, change it, enter it, do stuff. Call centers manufacture calls. We're even working with school districts that you could say you manufacture students. But the thing is, with a good instructor, you will find that the manufacturing analogies exist in the transactional world. The transactional process exists in the manufacturing world. What you should see in a good course is that where the tools are applied across all the genre. Now, some don't, but most do. What we would ask of you here is there are a couple tools we care about, even if you do a project that has no data. Now, if you get to the end and we're not comfortable that you can do a control chart, we will give you a simulated data set and ask you to analyze it to fulfill the total certification needs. That's really our answer. Now, that was long-winded, I hope. If that didn't answer your question, I hope you type back in again, please. Be back to my slides. Most training programs, like many courses I've been in my career, they give you a set of slides that are quite general. The instructor talks about them, and you've got to take a lot of notes to get what you need. All of my Six Sigma training until I joined Smarter Solutions didn't have a textbook to follow, although they gave us one. Most of the software used was Excel-based in some of them, but the later ones used real software, Minitab generally. There are some of our competitors that wrote their own little software programs, so they teach those so they can make a greater amount of cash by selling their software. And a lot of it, I hate to say it, sometimes you sit in the seat, you listen, and when you're done, they give you a certificate. But they were easy to get through and not learn anything. But the problem with a lot of Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma training today is it follows what I've got here is Rule 4 of the funnel. I'll take an aside to talk about something that I'm interested in. Deming, who's a quality guru from years ago, had a process control thing about rules of the funnel. He was talking about how to manage a process. And if you consider Lean Six Sigma training as a process, what he said is to reduce variation, get the most consistent result, basically held a funnel over a target and brought marbles down there and plotted where the balls ended up. And if you hold the funnel still and kept dropping balls, you'd get this nice pattern of dots that was pretty tight. But he went, that's Rule 1. Aim it the same way and run your process to the best of your ability. Rule 2 is wonderful. It said if the ball rolled off to the left, that must mean you would assume that I was targeted left, so you'd move the funnel to the right and drop the next ball. So he did it, you adjusted frequently based on the last result, and what you get is greater standard deviation. You're still centered around the middle. But you would adjust it based on wherever the shot landed with respect to the target when you dropped it. Rule 3 was a tough one where you adjust it based on the distance it was from where you aimed. But Rule 4 was the one I'm talking about here, which they said is you define the last completed item as perfect and target the next one to be like the last one. Now, the concept is if I learned to be a black belt and I went to train you, I can only train you in some subset of what I know, no more complexity. Well, at some point when that guy you taught becomes a teacher, he teaches a subset of what he knows. What you get pretty soon is the lowest common denominator and basically inadequate material. Forrest, the owner of the company, has one of, as he states, 3, maybe 4 original sets of Lean and Six Sigma material that ever existed. So his material that I'm teaching here when I teach, it hasn't been revised by each person going through. But there are others out there, but most of the training out there is somebody either picked up someone's book and made slides on what they thought were important. What you're getting here and in the top providers is the material is what people have found important over the last 20 years, not what your instructor thought was important. I'll tell you, it's tougher to teach here because you have to know all the tools that have ever been successful rather than just the ones that I like. Rule 4 of the funnel, the other one too, is I guess the perfect example is you're painting the outside of your house and you buy a can of paint one at a time. You go back to the hardware store and say match the color. They give you a gallon, they keep painting. When you get all around the house, the question is, does the house colors match when you reach it? And the answer is no. So one of the things you get from big providers, or the better ones, is you don't have that change that goes on with every time you teach it and every instructor. All right, changing subjects again. Why would you get a black belt? Because I think why was in the title of the webinar. We haven't got to that yet. What do black belts do? My last job, and I got a slide coming up. I would have thought I'd have put it in earlier about how I got to be this position to teach. But there are roles that black belts take. Some of them are just improvement project leaders. They are like, I guess here in Texas, the Texas Rangers from history were the law enforcement group that would go and fix stuff all around the state. And they had a rule, one riot, one ranger, for a colloquialism. For the concept, you didn't need a whole bunch, you just needed one. They were well-trained, they were skilled, they were probably good with a gun, but they only need one person to go fix a problem. Well, black belt improvement leaders are intended to be the same way. You don't need a team of experts. You need you, a black belt, to go into the work group, build a team using your skills, and solve the problem. So the concept, that was a primary job that black belts were trained for in general. But you would say you're in HR, you'd go into the law department and run one, then you'd go down to the waste treatment process to run a project. The next one might be in manufacturing, but you should walk out of your black belt course both confident and skilled enough to go walk anywhere in any business and solve a problem. The other one we find, though, beyond that, that's just the project side. Most black belts end up being business analysts. Your company will drag you into anything that's got data and ask you what's it mean. So I'll tell you, a lot of black belt training is about the translation of data to information. And I'll tell you, you'll get magical with it through a course. We use Minitab for our training because if you use a good statistical software, you don't have to teach statistics. You just have to teach how to use the software and interpret the answer. The last one I find happens often is just being a change agent. They will throw you, as a black belt, at problems in your business. Just go make them better. Work groups that aren't working together, you build a team because you learn how to do teams, you learn how to lead, you learn how to manage, you learn how to deal with budgets. You learn a lot in a good black belt course. So those are the three roles generally I see. Now, if you go to our course, you're prepared for all three of them plus more. So I think I got a question here. If you were to become a black belt in your current company, or if you're not employed right now in the company you may want to find work with, where do you think they would ask you to be working? Now, you can pick one or more of these, I believe. But I'd like you to pick the ones you think that you could be working at if you become a black belt. Wow. This is a first. If everybody would keep typing in. Right now, everyone's been selected at least once. All right. Generally, there's always one that's left out. That's why I'm surprised. If you can imagine a black belt, I see a lot of numbers, so patterns and numbers mean a lot. If you could close it out now, Mallory, give everybody an answer, please. You should, excuse me, see it on your screen, but it looks like projects are the big one. General change agent and cause and corrective action. What's interesting is cause and corrective action is not the primary set of tools you learn, but I think most of you are right that the tools you learn in black belt make you more apt to do cause and corrective action efforts well. Every company I've worked at that does cause and corrective action, at least half of them, the problem comes back again. So a lot of Lean Six Sigma tools make your cause and corrective action efforts more consistent, more permanent. So what are differences in black belts at different companies? Well, some of them have full-time black belts, and you'll hear that's the best way to go. Where, in other words, they pull you out of your job assignment and have you do this till you get good at it. Generally, a black belt would run about 2 projects at any one time, get 4 to 6 done in a year for 2 years, and they go back to work, to their old job. Some it's part-time. Now, I see many of them in today's environment do part-time because they're not willing to put the overhead together to keep enough projects to keep somebody busy. But part-time works. They do one project at a time. When one ends, they start the new one, but they also either a manager or a supervisor or have other jobs within the business. What's neat about this is now they're using the Six Sigma tools outside of Lean Six Sigma. They're doing analysis of production work. They're watching the timing of transactions. They're looking at how long purchase orders sit before they're touched. They start working everything. Now, a lot of them, though, use this black belt Lean Six Sigma stuff to become managers and coaches within their organization that just look at analysis of data. We have a number of students that are probably mid-level and above managers that aren't doing, they're going to run their project for training, but their goal is to know the questions to ask of their workforce to get things done, and they use these tools to teach everybody to be better. They're all good causes. But I would say if you're going into Lean and Six Sigma, don't get concerned if your company's usage of a black belt is different from the people in your classes or other companies that you read about, because these are all good ways to implement black belt training. Now, most every black belt ends up getting out of Lean Six Sigma or process improvement, going back to their job, generally a better position. They're a better employee. Many are promoted to leadership. When I ran a black belt or a Lean Six Sigma program with Bechtel, I had trouble keeping my black belts, and they were temporarily assigned to me for full time, even a year. They were all getting pulled out to run customer teams, to be mid and senior level managers, because they got so good at doing things, they were probably a better benefit to the company there than fixing problems. But at the bottom, there are some black belts, like I was, that love this work. They feel that they have found a job that was created with them in mind, and they have passion about it. They move on to be master black belts generally. Most master black belts have been a black belt for 3 to 5 years and just love it and want to go to the next step of learning 2 and 3 questions deep, learning the 1 out of 20 project tools you don't normally get. Plus, they love to share it with other people, and they become mentors. So that's what people do with the black belt. Now, that sounds fantastic, but it is not as easy as just taking a class. This is not a trivial task. If you go to a black belt class, don't assume it's like going to your introduction to Microsoft Word 2011. All right? You don't show up at 8 and drink coffee for an hour, do a couple exercises, sit there and read your email while they help everybody through it, get done at 3 and go out and hit the bars. No. I mean, especially our courses. You start at 8, we start it, and it's 4:30, 5 o'clock when we're done in class. There's generally homework, plus there's stuff to do between classes. If you're going to learn this stuff, you're going to learn it. It's not for everybody. I think if you had to know, if you say, what's the prerequisites to being a good black or green belt, you have to be somewhat of a system thinker. In other words, you can step back and look at, watch somebody do something and sort of picture it like a diagram of, well, they did this and then this and then this. You also need to have some level of support that you can ask questions of. Now, that could be an internal person, or it could be someone like me if I was your instructor. But you need someone to anchor what you learn back into your historical process knowledge. But I think in my whole time teaching here, there's only been one person that didn't get certified that wanted to. That they just realized they couldn't do it. Most everybody makes it. Now, if you go to one that's just online, I think their certification rates are lower. If you go to a real provider, they will stick with you a year or 2 to make sure you get done and learn your stuff. Well, here's about me. My story. Why do I get to talk to you? Again, if a question comes up, type it in and then I'll answer it. But I became a black belt in 1991 at Texas Instruments. About 3 years before that started my training, but it was way different. There was no course. They gave you a checklist. You had to go take classes to learn it all yourself and then apply. I worked up from being an entry-level engineer to the site engineering manager, and then got a statistics degree and decided I liked statistics better management. Went to the Department of Energy in an area run by Bechtel and became a statistician. Loved it. They got me back into Six Sigma, and I became a master black belt there and became a Bechtel worldwide trainer. Fantastic. I've seen probably 1,000 or more projects from every genre you could ever imagine, from manufacturing to service to research and development to schools. It's been a fun path to get here, but most of it today is not manufacturing. The fun part, though, is I also became the go-to data analyst for the whole Bechtel Corporation, which got me working on the big dig in Boston once to understand how the tunnel walls go out. So here I am, a master black belt in a Department of Energy site. I'm drug over to go look at why did a hole blow a hole in a wall in a tunnel in Boston. So again, these tools are applicable anywhere. I've been here, I think, 6 years, Mallory, something like that, teaching here in Austin for Force Bifold and Smarter Solutions, which has been a wonderful step from being a regular employee teacher to one that I really get more freedom to go out and coach, do data analysis, and teach a great set of material here. It's been a wonderful change, but that's what I'm doing now. So along this path, I've seen all these things come and go, and it's great to teach it to people. Now, what do you get if you do choose to come here for Smarter Solutions Lean Six Sigma Black Belt? Well, again, it's a 4-week class. You get all the improvement project skills, the DMAIC that you'd see in the body of knowledge. We also give you a set of analysis tools and an understanding of Minitab software that you wouldn't get in many places. You will exceed many of the data analysts in your own business. The next part is we spend a lot of time on soft skills. Because I'll tell you, doing numbers, if you can't work with people, it doesn't matter. So we teach leadership, we have team building, team management, presentation skills, because I'll tell you, you got to be able to convince people to believe you. It's not just solving the problem, especially if you go outside of your own genre or your own work area. Many of you probably can't imagine going into talk to the controller or a finance person to talk about an improved way to write the budget for your corporation and have them even give you the time of day. So a lot of that you need to learn. We spend time on the business too. Like, why should you do it? Should there be a Lean Six Sigma program? Is it really helping the business along? We find a weakness in many students that they have no idea how their business is run. So we talk to them about that. But the big one lets you be an improvement specialist in places you're not an expert. Now, we do use statistics, like I said, but this is not, and it's far from being a statistics course. All right. A couple things, too, that make us special. I talked earlier about not having good textbooks. One thing that's nice about teaching here is we've got a textbook that was written in parallel to the course notes. It's the third revision, at least, of the training textbook that the owner has written about it. So there's next to no errors in it. Plus, if you heard something in class, you heard your instructor speak about it, if you open the book and turn to a page that's referenced in your slides, you will see the exact same thing in there, taught a slightly different way. But if you're a reader, the books are wonderful. We give you a workbook that you can turn the page by page to walk yourself through an improvement project, but also that whole book is referenced back to the textbook and to your slides and to Minitab so that everything coexists synergistically. So if you can learn, you'll find a way to learn. There's also coming up here, we have a big process roadmap that shows exactly how you can walk through an improvement process. Now we come up with another question. I want to ask you your opinion. This is just opinion. If you were to be an improvement practitioner at your business or a business you have been at, what do you think the ratio of a successful person would be in their ability to have hard skills success or soft skills? To be successful, what's the ratio you think you need to be successful? You get to pick one. Are hard skills more important, like 90% hard, 10 soft, or is it the other way around, or about equal? Just interested in this one because it's a topic I care about. So please, Aaron, we'll give you another minute or so. But think hard about the most successful people. Were they better analysts or better leaders? It's really what we're talking about. All right, Mallory, give a little 2 seconds here and settle up. All right. You should see we've got a mixture of. Looks like they're tending to soft skills a little higher than hard skills. Well, I'll tell you something. For me personally, the soft skills are not taught in engineering school. So they've been the hardest for me to learn, but I think I would concur that really managing the change in a business is harder than coming up with the answer. Now, if you really believe what you wrote down there, though, and you're trying to pick out a good Lean Six Sigma program, do you want to find one that focuses only on hard skills? Think about that, because that'll be a lot about picking your program, how well they integrate the Lean Six Sigma hard skills into the soft skills of working within your business. So thank you for that. This is a list of the books we use to teach in the class. The one on the far right, to go right from left, is the book about how to do an improvement project. It is a brick. It's got to be, if you could see me, I'm holding my fingers about 4 inches apart by how thick that book is. But it's got team leadership. It's got change management. You'll see references to some of the great books out there about leadership and team management and change management. There are sections in there about giving training. There's sections about most of the soft skills, and plus creativity, which are some of my favorites, about what you need to be successful in a project. But again, there's also statistical textbook level reference material in there for most of the hard skills too. Covers all of the lean tools. There's excerpts from Learning to See, as an example, one of the greatest books on value stream maps. The owner has licensed the material to be in there to give you a single reference to business process improvement. Now, if I go backwards to volume 2, it's a business book. It's really about what Lean Six Sigma tools mean in the running of a business and managing businesses, and how they should relate to strategic planning, scorecards, and dashboards. As a black belt, we cover this topic in week 4 after we've been through the project. We're hoping you've seen the business. It'll make more sense, and we give you the book to read. It's about an inch thick. The other 2 books are overview books that are not meant to be reference books. They're meant to be advocacy books at some level. They talk about the business system and how Lean Six Sigma can apply to volume 1 is at golfing. How these concepts can help you golf better. All right, those are our books. Now this one, I know you can't read it. We could call this an eye chart. What I have here is the other materials for the class. There's the workbook called the Project Execution Guide. You get 4 binders with course notes, so you see every slide we show. Plus there's 2 PDFs you can acquire. The big long one you'll see in the lower left is actually, do I have it here? It doesn't say it. 96 inches long, 36 inches tall. That is the entire improvement roadmap for doing a project. Because the DMAIC across the top, expansions we do, plus all the drill downs to explain every step you possibly need to solve a project. Now this whole roadmap is referenced back to the textbook and to the slides, so that you can always find out how they all fit together. You also have one on the lower right, which is the application of DMAIC concepts into putting together a business system that applies Lean Six Sigma and comes up with good projects. All right. There's a lot of material you get for this. We give PDFs of the pictures. You don't get the picture yourself, but you can reference it and get it printed if you wish. Oh, here, I said this already. You get a binder with every course slide. So there's no question that you have all the material we show on the screen, but there are also, some people say, way too many slides. But for every analysis that we do, if there's using Minitab or Excel, we give you a screenshot of every menu you go to. So even without an instructor, you can duplicate every exercise back in your desk or back home after you're gone. They all reference back to the textbook if you want to read more on every topic. Plus homework is given at the end of every day in between weeks that also give you another chance to try on your own, but we also give you printed out answers for all the homework the next day. Within Smarter Solutions, they're very experienced teachers we use here, years of experience at doing this. So a lot of them are not, well, I guess everybody here is really a past successful black belt and master black belt. They're not from an academic background, they're from a background of being successful. Now, how do we teach? Now, you may not be in the teaching profession or have ever been there, but there's many ways to teach. Generally, for the key topics, you watch it done by the instructor and get the theory. Then as a group, you may do it, you're led through slides on how to go do it. Then you would do the tool, or excuse me, execute the tool or learning point by yourself during class with everybody working on their own. Then we have an experiential exercise. Away from the lecture, you're given some type of tool or mechanical device, catapult or Legos, to generate the kind of data or experience the tool was about so you can see it in real life. Then there's generally a homework assignment with a data set that's tied back to the book. You have to do it on your own. We, the next morning, go through all of them to make sure you get it. And then we take almost all the key tools and generalize them outside of the experience of the class. So you get them. They tell you when you teach, the first time you learn something, you tie the concept with the example. With the second time you cover something, you're starting to see the general nature. But it takes 3 experiences through a great tool to understand that it's a tool that is independent from the example, so it really is the concept. So we try very hard on all of these to cover them this way. One of the advantages of an instructor-like course is the instructor can look you in the eye and see if you're getting it. Now, differences in companies. With Smarter Solutions, we really believe we partner with our students. Classes aren't real large. We keep them small so you get attention. That's one of the reasons our prices are not as cheap as many of them, because you do get more than just sitting through a classroom and a binder of notes. We provide 5 hours of individual support and coaching outside of class with one of our master black belts. This is to be to do your certification review. It's to answer questions on anything from the course. And a lot of it's really to help people through their project. But we have used it to talk to their managers and everything to get it done. So we help you be successful. Quick question here. Do you think it's important that the materials match the lecture when you go to courses? See, how important is it? I know that Smarter Solutions would say it's the very bottom one, but where do you think it is in courses you're taking? What do you like to see? Well, most of you are sitting on that have answered right now are going on with integration helps. And maybe this was a trivial self-serving question that makes us look good, but I'll tell you something. It does matter, because then when you get a question in a year, if you can remember any of it, you can find your way back to the reference material and learn it. Well, if you close it off, Mallory, it looks like everybody picked the one I hoped you'd pick. But again, you'd be surprised how few Lean Six Sigma courses integrate both the lecture, the slides, the homework, and all this back to a single themed book. It is surprising to me. Let's finish up. One thing about this is a never-ending battle of learning. Maybe battle's a bad word. Journey that I still to this day am learning new things about Lean and Six Sigma from projects that students do, new things I learned in my reading. But if you're going to go on this path, I want you to recognize this is not a static learning event. You will be learning, because I can't, even if we were full-time for the 4 weeks, I couldn't teach you all the things you need to know. You learn them as you go. You build upon it. Now, there's many opportunities we provide to our students. There's blogs that are written on the business level and on the belt level that you could read about statistics and sampling and surveys along with scorecards. The website has also got a resource library with over 150 articles and white papers and webinars to watch and read to talk about different aspects of Lean Six Sigma and the business side, plus webinars like you're getting now. I provided one a couple of months ago, I think, about using design of experiments to make chocolate chip cookies, so they're not all dry either. Those cookies were actually moist. But it was fun. But there's a lot of things out there now. What you don't, I guess I should tell you, see all that continuing education? You can get all that without signing up with a course for us. It's all really provided to anybody who wants. But I'll tell you, with a good basis of learning, it all comes better. So here's what we've been through. We've covered them. Is there any questions that have been not answered so far to get here? You were expecting to see something I didn't cover. I'd like to hear any last questions.
Have you eliminated all non-value add unnecessary waste in the training to allow for a little time in the bars?
Oh, if I was your instructor, we generally pick one night a week and adjust the homework and stuff. There's a night to go see the town, no matter where we're training. But no, there is time to do it. The hard part, I know you're joking some, but how do you decide what's non-value added? I will tell you, every student thinks there's non-value added material in our training, but every instructor knows that it does have value. You just haven't found it yet. So no, there is still time to go to the bar. We actually teach at a hotel that's got a free happy hour starting at 6, 3 nights a week, so you'll find your time.
One other question that was asked prior to the webinar that I think would be good to cover is about what is the expectation of prior knowledge for the students when they come to class on day one?
Is a minimum requirement. I mean, you have to have Minitab, you have to have a PC that's got Microsoft Office tools on it. But what should you know? I think the most important thing is you've got some life experience in businesses. The worst student I find is one that just came out of college and really hasn't had a job yet, and they're going on for another educational experience. But this is really tied to your experiences. The best students will go, now I understand what I saw years ago. It's great if you can draw a process map. You have to have some level of analytic skills and algebra. I think you have to be able to do squares and a logarithm, and that's not all the math you really need. We have got a green belt through that had never used Excel before, and that was probably the farthest down the prerequisites we've had, but he made it. So we don't want anything more than that. The more you learn, sometimes it's harder to break those bad habits. Mallory?
Okay, I think that's all the questions for now, and we've reached our hour mark, so we're going to wrap up the webinar for today. Please know that we would like to address any unanswered questions you might have. If you are listening to a recording, please feel free to contact us, and we would be happy to go over any of those outstanding questions. We also have a survey at the end when you exit the webinar. Please fill that out. We would like to get your feedback. So again, we thank you for taking the time to join us, and we will wrap it up and look forward to talking with you further.
Thanks again, everybody.